Welcome to the Balanced Badass Podcast, the show for multitaskers determined to stay balanced and badass without losing their minds. Every week, we help you manage your overflowing calendar and household, making sure you still have time to breathe, laugh, and savor that much-needed glass of wine at the end of the day. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of practical advice, humor, and tough love, just like catching up with a friend who really gets it. I'm Tara Kermiet, your personal growth coach, helping you handle how was your day without a meltdown. Now let's get into today's episode. All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of the Balanced Badass Podcast. And I'm so excited to welcome Audrey Rose. She's a registered nurse and nervous system regulation coach. She's also the founder of the Rise movement and host of the top podcast, the Ready to Rise podcast, which actually we were talking about kind of backstage that it's a global phenomenon now at this point. So that's really awesome.
Thank you.
Yes. So, Audrey, you help high-achieving women regulate their nervous systems and reconnect with their true happiness without losing their ambition. And your work is really a blend of somatic healing, sound medicine, and spiritual wisdom. And that's all stuff that I'm really interested in. And I love that you are really emerging as this voice in the mental health space, coming from what I think is a really unique and really special lens. And so I'm just looking forward to our conversation today, because I know from what you've shared from your previous experiences and just following you on social media that you have been where a lot of my listeners have been. Yeah. You kind of know what that feels like, especially as a nurse in the medical field. And so you know that things aren't always perfect, but we really owe it to ourselves to care for ourselves. So I'm just so excited to welcome you to the Balanced Badass Podcast. And as I do, I'd love for you to kind of open up the floor and just share with us, like, what's something that you're loving in your life right now?
Oh my gosh. I love this question to start us off. Start with kind of the good, the exciting. I'm home right now. We were just talking about this too. And not everybody gets this opportunity. And I'm so freaking obsessed right now to just be home. My dog just had surgery. And so we're in this recovery period. And I did work quite a bit to be able to set myself up for this moment to really be able to take 2 weeks off. I have a couple podcast things I'm doing, and that's pretty much it. And I'm feeling so blessed. I've been binging Halloween movies because it's that time of the year, and just really honestly resting. And it feels really, I'm loving it. I'm obsessed with this right now.
Love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I think you know this, I had knee surgery probably actually we're at the 6-month mark.
No way. Oh my gosh.
Time goes by which really is wild. Fast. It really does. But I took a full month off for that recovery, and really it turned into more like 2 months because things didn't go always as planned. But that was really nice to be able to have that time and to just have that ability to be able to do so and the freedom to do so. And I'm actually planning to do the same in December for the holiday. So I'm going to take some time, almost the entire month of December off. So super pumped about that.
Yes. God, it's
going to be the first time ever that I've been able to do that.
It.
So
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I'm glad to hear that the little baby's doing well. I am a dog lover myself, so I know how much they can stress us out, but also how much we care for them.
Right.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So a lot of what I love about your work is really the different lenses that you come from, because you do have this nurse background in health. And so you're blending science as well as soul into the work that you do. And I really do appreciate that. And I know a lot of people hear about nervous system regulation. I talk about it a lot with folks as kind of your first line of defense to burnout. And they think that it's just about relaxation, but it's so much deeper than that. So for those of us listening, can you just break down what nervous system regulation really means and why it can really make a difference, especially for high achieving women.
Yeah. So I have to start with like the short version of my story because I think it's so like relatable to, how we get here. And I know you talk about this a lot too. And there's so many different ways to get really burned out. It's really easy to do, especially as women. And for me personally, it all happened, in relation to the pandemic. Like I was a fairly new nurse. I was, I think 5 years in or something like that into my career, which is pretty young. And I mean, they just kind of like I was voluntold, they just handed it to me. Yeah. You're going to run this unit. You're going to be one of the lead nurses, blah, blah, blah. I didn't even know like what being a lead nurse, I didn't know. I just knew that's the person I ask my questions to when I'm at work. And I was there. And then, of course, like the important people, state, all these, regulatory like people were coming and making sure that we were up to regulation and that we had everything going correctly and all of that. And I was like, whoa, I don't even know what I'm doing. So like now these really scary people are like checking on me. And it was just one thing after another like that, where I just kept, kind of getting like really freaked out and, in this kind of like, just freaked out, phase. And then I worked a lot. And that's what really did it in was I worked so much. Something happened to me, and sorry if you can hear my dog in the background. She's like trying to get all my attention, of course. But something happened to me where I just was like, you know what? I need to work. I took full ownership of that place. And of course, there were other people doing the same job as me. They didn't need me to be there 24/7. But I wanted to work constantly. I thought that I had to do this. I thought that I was so needed and I was so important and all these things. And I would work. They didn't have the same regulations on us as usual because it was like a state of emergency. So I was allowed to work extra. And I would work as much as I could because I just felt this responsibility for some reason. And I would work, 9 days in a row, 14 days in a row, crazy amounts of these 12-hour shifts, And I remember my mom telling me, you are going to burn out. And I was like, no, lady, like I am fine. I'm young. I'm great. I'm like living on autopilot at this moment. I don't even have to do my own laundry. The hospital's doing everything. It's cool. And sure enough, as we got to the tail end of that time period, I would be home on the couch. I just remember basically like just exhausted, tired, it's like literally just a vegetable, like a couch potato all day long. But if I was at work, I was on point because the alarms and the stimulation, and I would get back into that fight or flight mode when I was there. So anyways, yeah, long story long, I just ended up super burned out and I just could barely function when I was home on my days off. So that led me into learning a lot about this, somatic healing and how we can start to kind of change. I had to take a sabbatical off work. My doctor kind of forced me to do this. She was like, you have to take a long break. Like as soon as it's a good fit for you and it's time for you that you can do this, you've got to take time. It started with 2 weeks off and ended up being 3 months. And I still didn't quite feel like myself. But during that time, she made me like literally like sign a plan that like I was going to do nothing for 2 weeks, but sleep and watch like movies. And then it progressed into like, let's try yoga. Let's try sound healing. Like you have to try new things and you have to check in with me and show me that you're trying them. And so I just tried all this new things. And I tried, what really landed was the sound healing. Sound healing just ended up being something I became obsessed with, where I was like, I need to like this is calming me down. It feels really good. And of course that led into more and more like breath work and all these different things. But just finding those kinds of techniques to kind of calm me down. And I didn't even know at the time, like what it was doing. And now I do. Now I can pair kind of my background as a nurse and to understanding the physiology of like what is happening in my body when like a sound bath happens. And so it's so fun to like blend that kind of like woo-woo side of things with just, the nervous system regulation, the physiology of it.
Yeah, that's so cool. I appreciate you sharing your story and especially recognizing a lot of folks that I talk with do work in healthcare. And you really do hear very similar pieces. One of the trauma that came with COVID and still lingers to this day. I know I have a lot of friends that work in healthcare too, and we talk about just how much their approach to work has changed because of everything. And the thing that you said about like the alarms and the constant like just stimulation going on at work, you felt like was energizing you, but really was zapping your energy, because by the time you get home, you have nothing left to give in the tank. And that's, folks feel that so often. And I know for myself too, like when I got burned out, it took the like severe bodily reaction for me to realize like, dude, something's not right.
Yeah.
And as much as you probably didn't love it in the moment, I love that your provider was like, no, I'm holding you accountable to this, because we need that as humans, especially when you're in that moment, because you're not thinking clearly, you're not able to do it. Yeah. So having that person to kind of push you and nudge you to try new things, because I don't know about you, but like I wouldn't have thought about doing sound healing originally.
Yeah. I remember too,
awesome.
just like have to share a quick side note. I remember I almost didn't even go inside. I finally showed up and I'm sitting in the parking lot and I was like, this is going to be some weird cult thing. I don't even know. Like, I don't know what this is. And then I remember just finally like being like, no, we need to try things. We need to heal, and going in. And then, like I just became like addicted. Like every single Monday night, I kept going to the same place. And but really, I mean, it's easy to be skeptical of some of these things and not really want to try them. And so I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. And what I talk to people about when we're trying and experimenting, and that's what a lot of my approach in my coaching style is, just like, let's experiment, let's try things out. Because at this point, you've already hit rock bottom. Like, what do you have left to lose?
Really?
So what? You go into a sound healing session. I don't even know what it's called. Clearly, I have not done one. But you go into one and you're like, I'm going to feel awkward. I'm not going to know what to do. Nobody else is paying attention to you, first off. Like, you're not that special.
Right.
I hate to break it to you. But also, so what? If it doesn't work out and it doesn't work for you, the worst thing you've lost is just a little bit of that time.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
Which you probably needed a little bit of time to not do work anyways, so you're fine.
Right.
But yeah. Well, okay, so kind of moving on. Yeah. And you talked about like this fight or flight. Once someone kind of realizes, okay, my system is fried or maybe frozen, maybe they're in that freeze state. What are some of those first few ways that they can really start to like wake it back up and bring it back online? And I'm talking like real life here, right? We've got deadlines. Yeah. Folks have full inboxes. I was just talking to someone earlier today and she's like, I've been off for a week. I'm going to come home or go back to work and there's going to be 700 emails in my inbox. And I'm like, that's bonkers. Folks have kids running around, dogs running around. Like, what does regulation actually look like in the middle of all of that?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of things I want to say, but I know like so often we think that regulation literally means that we're able to stay calm all the time and zen, and I go to yoga every single day. And it's like, that is not real life. Like, I love telling women, like I think that so often we think as like high achieving, very ambitious women that, getting a regulated nervous system means we have to take a year off of work, or we have to quit this like corporate job that we like worked so hard to get, and that's not the case. We just have to learn the simple techniques that will make this life more manageable and give us more capacity to do all the things, because we can. And like, I'm a highly ambitious woman. And like, so I'm like, oh, I feel you. I'm on your side. Like, I'm not going to tell you to quit your job, but we can add in simple tools. And that's why I love just simple kind of somatic healing, just there are nervous system regulation techniques that work on the body. And that's what I like to teach. So mainly I like to teach EFT tapping, sound healing, and breath work. And they're really simple things. They can be an hour-long, deep, immersive experience, or we can do a 5-minute EFT tapping, or we can do a quick round of box breathing. And it's just similar to like what you mentioned as how you were saying you teach tools or nervous system regulation as like that first line of defense, because there's obviously deeper patterns we can uncover and there's deeper work we can do. But in the moment when your kids are running around and you're about to go yell at your significant other, and you might I almost yelled at my boss back when I was like the director, like the boss back in those days. And I know how it feels like when you're right in the middle of it. Just slow down and do a couple of tools. Do a couple of, something, a box breathing session. I still do this where I'll literally at work in the middle of stressful time, like obviously not when I have to be at the bedside, coding someone or something. But, when I feel like the pressure's starting to rise and I can take a minute, I'll go lock myself in the bathroom and do a few rounds of box breathing, just something simple. Or even just a quick meditation. Like I love to throw them up on my YouTube channel, just like quick 5-minute meditations or something like that. But just you can find them for free all over the internet, right? There's so many resources nowadays. So just go and do something that's going to bring you back down and kind of calm your nerves. Because when we let ourselves continue, and I can talk about this, kind of when I go through like the RISE method, we can talk in a little bit more detail. Or maybe I should right now just talk about kind of like the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic response. Because when we're in like a fight or flight type response and it keeps building up, the stress response keeps building up. If we don't start to unpack some of that stress response in our body, we're going to keep going until we get to where I was, where I had to take 3 months off work and I was forced to take 3 months off work, right? So kind of what happens, I think it would be a perfect time to kind of dive in, is what happens in our body is we get into like this really primal part of our brain when we start to get stressed or when we think that there is like a threat happening. And it's literally like the caveman part of our brain, like the earliest part of our brain before it developed into everything it is now. And we sense a threat. Very similar to what our ancestors did when they lived in a cave and there was literally like such a need for food and shelter and like a tiger came out of nowhere, right? You get this big threat and you go into a full-blown stress response. And what happens is our nervous system has a couple of different parts. And I'm not going to go through all of that, but one of the little pathways is called the sympathetic response. And that's where our whole nervous system kind of goes into fight or flight mode, which we hear about often. Our, muscles need more blood so that it can run away from the tiger. So it pulls blood away from our digestive system. We get, more oxygen needed to our lungs, right? We literally, even our eyes change so that we can just focus on the threat that's ahead. And we have this whole entire stress response. Our body completely changes. And that's the sympathetic. I like to call it like the gas pedal. It's literally like we're just full on in gas pedal mode. Like we are trying to race out of there, get going. What happens is that's when we release all of those stress hormones, the cortisol, all of that kind of stuff, right? And we just get so hyped up and amped up. And if we live in that state for too long, we start to get used to living from there. We have less time where we come into the opposite state, which is like the parasympathetic state, where we do relax and, we have our digestion and we're just kind of able to chill. And so when we stay in the sympathetic and we're there too often, we start to get really used to that. Our body kind of craves that stress. We start to just stick to that. We want to let our bodies have a stress response when it really needs to, when there really is a threat. Maybe you have a big deadline coming up. You want some stress. Maybe you something almost happens, right? And you run and you fix the thing or, whatever. But we also need to be able to come into that parasympathetic response. And I like to say that that's kind of like the brakes of your car, right? When you go on a nice scenic drive, you want to have a little gas and a little brakes. And that's how we really want to live our lives, not fully in one or the other all the time. There's just kind of a time for both. So I guess that's the easiest way to describe is the whole car situation. So we kind of do a little bit of each one. And you want to live life. So like when you're in that stress response, a lot of times nowadays, we think that everything is a stress response because we just get so overwhelmed. There's so much happening. There's constant notifications on our phone. It's our boss is like coming in. Like my boss the other day came in and like interrupted me while I was like at work, like working at the, bedside, like with a patient. And I was like, this is not the place for you to talk to me. But like we see all these things happen, right? And we get interrupted and our body just thinks it's a threat, even if it's not. And so we go into that whole response with the gas. And so we really just want to come in with some tools in the moment when you can and bring us back into like pump the brakes, basically. Come back into that kind of parasympathetic response to calm down.
What I appreciate and I think what I can relate to really well is the normalization of being in that just constant chronic stress. And that's where, trying to make and help folks understand like the distinguish pieces between stress is not inherently bad. Like it exists in our bodies for a reason. It's when it becomes this normal state in your body that's where the concerning factor kind of comes into play, at least in my work, like, when you're trying to distinguish between regular work stress and then what makes it burnout. Well, burnout is when you don't go back into that parasympathetic, like ever. Yeah. And you're just in that chronic state of stress at work and to the point where it's not managed well and you haven't figured out those methods or systems to be able to bring it back down to equilibrium. I really appreciate that gas pedal brake kind of analogy too, because if you think about it as well, there's a way to slam on the gas or gently touch the gas. There's a way to slam on the brakes or slowly come to a stop. And that's really recognizing when you're kind of putting the pedal to the metal versus when you're slowly either letting up the gas and slowly putting on the brake. Yeah. Because those transition points too can cause a lot of stress for us. And I also really thought of, and this may be a weird analogy, but we hear the parable, the story, I don't know, of the boy who cried wolf, right? And I think about when we're in this constant state of stress and we're constantly saying, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I'm whatever, we no longer have the ability to really identify legit stressors and dangers. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that to me is like the concerning factor there. When you start to normalize the stress, especially I think like in the workplace, when I start to see people essentially gaslighting themselves or justifying the environments that they're in, where I'm like, no, it's like a toxic, dangerous place for you to be in. But you have just been in this constant state of fight or flight that you don't even realize that you need to be leaving, like getting out.
I love that.
Let's get into a little bit more of the RISE method, because I know obviously you talked through some of it, but I really love for you to walk more deeply through those 4 parts, and even a little bit more about how someone can like tangibly use this method during either a stressful workday or a tough emotional moment. Because I know for me, I emote quite often through my eyeballs, even if it's really just any extreme emotion. It's happy, sad, joyful, whatever. Tears are going to come out of my eyeballs. So walk us through this and maybe some like tangible practices for us.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so the first part is really recognizing it. So we know, like, I wanted to give you that backstory of the gas and the brakes earlier, or kind of like, the science of that, so that you kind of know what's happening in your body. But recognizing that you are in a stress response, recognizing that you are like hitting the gas, the pedals like to the metal, like whatever, right? And whatever those signs are for you, because for everybody, they might be a little bit different, but start to notice what's happening to you that shows that you're in a stress response. For me, there is a lot of snapping involved. Like my husband knows she's not okay. There's a lot of me being really short and snippy with him, especially. Also, for me personally, there's a lot of isolation when I'm really stressed. I notice myself just kind of like, just not texting people back, not calling people back. I don't want to be social. So paying attention to what those signs are for you that, hey, I'm getting a little stressed. You might even just be breathing a little bit quicker, not wanting to talk to people, snapping at people. A lot of those things start to come up. And the second part, the I, is to interrupt it. So I want you to notice that this is happening. I'm about to chew my boss's head off, whatever. I'm snapping at like when I was lead nurse back then, when I was really stressed, I would snap sometimes at some of the nurses, which is not cool and not nice. I would be really, really, really just overwhelmed. So before we hit that point, you feel it coming up, we need to interrupt that response. We are stressed out, we're frustrated, we're overwhelmed, whatever. So pause. If you're in a place that you can walk away, please do. If you are in the middle of answering a bunch of emails, just close that tab or minimize the tab, right? If you're going to yell at your husband, walk away. You can have a little code word even. I think that's something that I need to implement. But I'll just tell my husband, literally, I'll just tell him I'm super overwhelmed. I love you so much. Give me a minute. And just take that minute. Take a pause. I, put myself in timeout. I'll literally go sit in my room, or, if I'm at work,
I do the same.
So good. Or like I was saying earlier, if I'm at work, I'll go to the bathroom, right? Just get yourself away from the environment. And then the third part is to do some kind of somatic regulation. So there are multiple stress reducing techniques. There's so many people are talking about so many things. I just want you to keep it simple if you can. Like I said, a quick box breathing. Literally, it's the 4 count breath in, 4 count breath hold, 4 out, and then 4 holding it out. So it creates a box. That's the simple, one that everybody kind of does. You can go, I have all my sound bowls behind me. So sometimes I will do a sound bath for myself, but you can go online, right? Or anywhere you can find a sound bath. You can find a quick meditation, like I was saying earlier. A lot of people do different kind of tapping, if EFT tapping, a simple EFT emotional freedom technique tapping, or even just tapping, if you can cross your arms and just tap bilaterally on your shoulders or even your thighs or something. Just something to kind of signal your body that you're okay. The vagus nerve is one of the biggest nerves in our body. It's huge. I've literally been so blessed to learn about these things and see this in anatomy, which is so cool. And this nerve can actually bring in the signals from our environment to our brain. So this is a really easy way to do. A lot of people talk about vagus nerve because it's going to bring the cues from our environment back into our brain to let us know that we are safe. So, you've sensed the threat, you're having a stress response, and we want to, interrupt it. And then when we do that somatic regulation, do something that's going to be either tapping works, but breath work works really, really fast to tell that vagus nerve that you're safe. And it's just going to carry that signal back to your brain to kind of override that response. That's what we really want to do. That's our goal here, is to let our body know that this response was amazing. Thank you, body. You're doing all the right things, but I don't need this response right now. I'm not truly running away from a tiger. I'm not truly starving, and threatened by having no shelter or no food or something like that. Just because my boss emailed me, this isn't a massive stress response that I need to have right now. And so breath work is really, really, really quick. That's why the box breathing is one of my favorites, even though it's really simple, it's literally going to activate the vagus nerve. It's going to change the way your diaphragm is breathing right now, is, moving, so it can rub on the vagus nerve and actually give you that response really quickly. And again, the EFT tapping is great. I also love sound healing. It vibrates our cells. It vibrates everything on a cellular level. So it kind of just carries these signals. And there's so much science behind how all of this stuff works. But I think that's the important thing to know is that with somatic healing, these are scientifically proven, even though they're very woo-woo kind of tools. So where you're just oh, I'm going to sit in a bathroom and tap on my face for a while. But EFT tapping is proven to reduce cortisol levels by 43% in an hour. And an hour is a long time. We're not going to lock ourselves in the bathroom for an hour, but just imagine even 5 minutes is going to reduce those levels, bring us back down, let us breathe again. And then we can go back out, to whatever task we need to go back to from a different state of mind. And so the fourth step, the E, is embody. And that's where it's like we come back, we're a calmer person, we're a little bit more regulated, and I want to like stay in that a little bit more often. The more often that we go through these steps and then embody that personality, like that version of us who's got a little bit more capacity to get stressed out, but come back down and chill, but allow stress to come and have that stress response, that's going to create the neuroplasticity to where we're going to have, the ability to come back down into that calmer person more often. We're going to go through the stress response, and our brain's going to remember that it's okay. We don't need to be this stressed out, and it's going to happen more often. So just really building that neuroplasticity or that new pathway. And the more often we do that, the more we get to embody that version of ourselves who's able to kind of, handle stress a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking too, that was an interesting stat with the tapping and how much of a drastic difference that can really make. Mm-hmm. And like you said, sure, we're not going to lock ourselves in the bathroom and do it for an hour. But if you think about also with that embodiment, as you're building these small 5-minute increments, they're going to compound on one another and be able to like kind of have that line of defense where it becomes like the natural response for your body. Whereas right now, like most of our natural responses is like, what's going on? Like, I don't know what to do. We want to, we want to interrupt that. It's all about this pattern interruption too. And I think that's the hard part. Yeah. Is that stepping away, the putting ourselves in timeout. I can relate to so much what you were saying. I too am a snapper. So if that's usually my sign that I'm like stressed if I start snapping at my husband or even the dogs. Like if I start just getting really agitated at things that like, they're dogs, leave them alone. Like, then I know something's not right here. I'm off balance a little bit. So I'm really intrigued too, because once someone does start to embody this and really kind of embrace this newer version of themselves that's a little not stress-free, but more, I always say like burnout resistant, so stress resistant. When folks do start doing this work more often, especially I think as a woman, speaking as a woman, we often want to know like, how will I know this is working? Like, if I give this a shot, how am I going to know that this is doing what it's supposed to be doing? What are some of the subtle signs that your nervous system is actually healing? Not just that maybe you're coping better, but that you're actually managing what you need to be managing and that you're regulated a little bit more.
Yeah. I think some of the biggest thing, the biggest things are really going to be the awareness and the capacity changes. So you are going to notice a lot quicker that you are in a stressed state. You're going to have so much like that heightened awareness of, whoa, that is stressing me out. And I think that the big thing that does is allow us to start to do the deeper work of like setting boundaries or why is this my pattern or all that kind of stuff. We want to be able to, notice like this is going to set me over the edge. Maybe, our significant other asked us to do something else on our list or whatever. And so instead of just snapping at them and yelling like, I can't, handle that, we're able to like take a step back, respond a little bit more calmly and kind of set a boundary of, hold on, that's going to be a little too much for me right now. I don't think I can commit to that, but whatever you want to say to end that. And then another thing is going to be us just having a little bit more capacity. So noticing that you are not getting as stressed out as you used to, right? Like there may be a little bit, I guess the same amount of tasks on your plate. And you notice that when you start the day and you're looking at, your calendar for the day, your schedule for the day, you're not like overwhelmed and hating your life right away. You wake up feeling a lot more like in control. you know what, this is literally just the fact that I need to email this person back. Or, hey, this is just a phone call I need to make today. It's not the end of the world, because it doesn't set us into that full-blown stress response, because we have built more of that like vagal tone, or we've built more of that capacity, the gas and the brakes, they're doing their little dance. So you'll notice just a lot of these changes of like, whoa, I handled that, I'm less reactive. I handled that a lot differently than the old me would have. The old me would have been, an hour deep into a fight with her husband by now. But today I was able to just kind of, put myself on timeout for a minute and then respond kindly. So you'll notice these changes, and it just truly, to me, I think that, like the ultimate goal is just a happier life. That's like what I always think. And so it really can lead us into just not a toxic positivity state or like a state of bliss at all times, but a more content and peaceful life. And I think that's really the goal.
Yeah. And I can see the connection to the recognizing piece of the RISE method, because the more you're tracking both the struggles and the negative kind of responses, the more you can also start to recognize when those aren't happening. And that's what, like, a lot of times I work with folks on energy mapping, because I want to see the trends of how your energy changes. And like for certain triggers, like if you notice like checking your inbox is something that you dread and that eats up a lot of your energy, when we start to implement some of the strategies that I work with folks on, are we noticing that changes and shifts? Because that's data that can really help inform you on what's working and what's not working, which I think is important, kind of to your point of like, try all these different methods, see what's going to stick for you, because it's not going to be, everything's not going to work for everybody. And you need to really find, I say at least like 2 or 3 of your like core practices that are really going to be what works for you. And they can be simple, they can be a little bit more complicated, but knowing where the difference has changed, kind of where that delta is, if you're talking like in the research kind of concept, is really, really interesting. And you can kind of see how that RISE method almost circles amongst itself. Like it's a constant cycle with the embodiment feeding back into the recognition piece, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And just remembering that, like, I think it's such a simple acronym to hopefully remember, like it, as long as you can just remember it right in the moment, like, hold on, this is happening. Okay, RISE. And then we just go through it,
Yeah. And that helps with that pausing for a second in that pattern interruption too.
Totally.
So, I even say too, one of the best tips that I got from my therapist, because like I said, I emote through my eyeballs, and back in 2018, my dad passed away when I was at work. Those months afterwards, like I was having even more, obviously, like emotional responses to everything. And I was talking to her and I was like, listen, I just want to stop crying at work. Like, I don't see a fault in crying at work. It's just right now, like, it's a little excessive here. So what can I do? And a few of her tips, one of them was, she's like, sip cold water through a straw, because that, whatever science is there, does something in your brain that puts you kind of in the present moment. And then another thing too that she had me do, which is something that I still use to this day, is like, if you're able and have the like space and ability to, stand on one leg, because
that's good.
Your focus goes to balancing. You can literally no longer cry while doing that. I've tried. It really works. Like, I have literally tried to cry through while balancing, and I can't do it. So
good.
I don't know what the voodoo magic is there, but that's a tip that is pretty easy and allows you to quickly pause. And just kind of reset for a minute.
I love that.
So I really appreciate
cold water
that.
is like, there's like a vagus nerve link there, so I won't get into it, but that's really cool.
I figured as much after you were talking about that. I was like, oh, that's probably the cold water situation. And it was very funny because she was very specific. She's like, it has to be through a straw, because it's also, I guess, with the sucking motion and all that. I don't know.
Oh my God. I could like nerd out about this so much right now. Will we do that for people yeah, I'm like, don't want to get into it. I don't want people to take any medical advice, but there's a certain thing that can happen with your heart that we would do that with people literally clinically. We would just like give them a straw and be like, okay, try to suck as hard as you can, or blow out. So, yeah, it just activates that response. But that vagus nerve brings us back to that parasympathetic response, and it just so quickly can override that stress. So I'm so glad that worked for you. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I even use it sometimes like in the middle of the night when I'm like mind racing.
Yeah.
I will do that too. Or I'll stand up out of bed and stand on one leg just to kind of like stop thinking about that. So well, I know I'm looking at the time here. So I want to get to my last question before we wrap up. And that question is just, how do you define being a balanced badass in your own life? Because this podcast is really all about balanced living with badass results. And I like to hear everyone's different perspective on what being a balanced badass is like.
I feel like this might get a controversial response because some of the, all the yogis and the gurus are going to be like, you shouldn't say that. But honestly, like, do it all. Like, let's go freaking conquer the world. Like, to me, that is so badass to be like a woman. I'm like, I always speak to women, but a woman, a man, like whoever you are, just go be a human that is doing everything that you want to do and like living your best freaking life, but like not to the point that it's stressing you out and, making you just suffer in any way. But I want you to go like do all the things, like live your best freaking life. And hopefully, by incorporating some, stress reduction techniques and things like that, you have the capacity to go do it all.
I love it. What a great way to end too. Like, just go freaking do it all.
Yeah.
Live your best life. Love it. Well, thank you so much. I could literally talk to you all day. So I really do appreciate you for sharing your insights and all that. And for anyone who's listening that might want to dig more into your work and connect with you, what's the best place for them to start learning from your experiences or even work with you firsthand?
Yeah. Oh, I have two things I want to share with you guys. So of course, Instagram's the place, hello, Audrey Rose. You can find, that's just where I share everything. But I would love to share with you guys like a free little bundle of my 3 favorite tools. So if you go to helloaudreyrose.com/happiness and then use code BADASS, you will get like the free, it's like a little bundle. And it's just a little duo of my favorite tools, tapping, sound healing, and a little breathwork session. So they're a little longer than something you could do locked in a bathroom, but definitely a perfect way to like end your night or start your day with a little bit of that, like, the breaks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that gift. Yeah. I will be signing up. That's for sure. Really appreciate that. And folks, I'll be sure to link those in the show notes. And I really encourage anyone listening to give Audrey Rose a follow. She really shares a lot of great stuff, and just start exploring her resources, because you deserve to feel calm, to feel clear, and to feel connected without losing your edge, with being able to be that badass that you are. And if you took something away from today's episode, I hope that you would send this to a friend who's maybe been running on empty, who could use a little bit of this encouragement and reminder that it's okay to put themselves first. Sometimes the most supportive thing that we can do is to remind someone that they're not broken, they're just overdue for a little self-love. So thank you again, Audrey Rose. Really appreciated it. And I guess just take care, friend.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with me on the Balanced Badass podcast. I hope today's episode brought you a little more balance and a lot more badass in your day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a review. Your support helps more multitaskers like you find the show, and I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, take care of yourself and make good choices, friend. I'll catch you next week.